and child rearing practices was actually a classic study. And so anyway, I went to volunteer, and they had a little bit of money, and they hired me for a day and a half. And she said, we'd like you to work with the normal children here. It was a child study center, which was founded by Spock and Erickson. Benjamin Spock and Erik Erickson and Margaret McFarland.
Oh my gosh.
And so she said, and we'd like you to work with the schizophrenic children at Western Psych doing art therapy. Well, I'd read, Margaret Namberg's early case studies, and Edith's book had come out by then.
Yeah.
I said, I'm not a therapist, I'm a teacher. She said, oh, don't worry, I'll supervise you. She was a psychologist. And she knew my wealthy child psych professor, so. But you know how you just sort of, it's probably transferred. We just liked each other a lot. And I loved the atmosphere in this place. Like my daughter was going to a good preschool at the Unitarian Church, but the feeling at Arsenal was so much different. Because of Erickson, I think, and Margaret, because they were into play and self-expression.
Right.
So,
do you want me to get this out of your way?
no. I'm still eating.
Okay. Well, it's 2:30.
It's 2:30. I have to start.
That's why I'm asking. I just want to know what you need to get you prepped.
I just need to start the class, I guess. So I'll tell you. So here's the quick story. So I see the kids over there, and they're really crazy kids. They'd be on the autistic spectrum nowadays. They stayed there for months. One of the little girls, I called her Dorothy in child art therapy, she barely could speak. She had a lot of neurological damage, and she was very awkward physically.
Okay.
And she was always flapping her arms like a bird. She started drawing birds. Anyway, she did this very dramatic artwork, and out came the aggression that she never expressed directly. And she started drawing the kids on the unit. It was really fascinating. She wouldn't talk to her child psychiatrist. She wouldn't talk to her teacher. So Erickson came, and he did a grand rounds, which means all the psychiatry. Yeah. And I was asked to present my work with Debbie. That was her actual name. And so he and my chairman, the chairman of child development was in child psychiatry, which was all psychoanalytic at that time.
Right.
So he and I and the chair of the department went out for a drink afterward, and he said, that was wonderful work. It's the only place she's making progress, which was sad, but it was very obvious even to me. And I said, but I don't know what I'm doing. I'm flying by the seat of my pants. I have no clinical training. What should I do? What should I study, Professor Erickson?
So he's a mentor type figure.
Well,
a little bit.
I mean, I knew who he was. I'd read his books.
Right.
And he said, do not do anything. Do not study anything, because it will ruin your natural intuitive flair.
I love it.
And so it took me 6 years before I had a supervisor who said, yeah, I think you should study something.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But, I mean, I wasn't a genius like Erik Erickson or Edith Kramer or Anna Freud.
Well,
I
you
did
are now, so you got something going.
Well, I think it is true. Some people have a natural ability to relate to people. But he also, his wife, Joan, was a dancer, and they worked at Austin Riggs. So he was an artist before he became an analyst. He was a painter.
I don't know that I knew that.
Yeah.
Is that little known?
They split the territory. She was the artist, he was the analyst.
Interesting.
He wrote books. And so I met Joan years later on a committee, a task force for the President's Commission on Mental Health.
Right.
And she was really negative about our therapists, because there was a lot of people calling themselves our therapists who didn't know.
It was very early.
Doing.
It was very early.
Very early. This is late 70s.
Yeah.
Around the time of that meeting. And anyway, then she said, well, if they were all trained like you, like some of my best friends. I said, we're trying to make better training standards. Mm-hmm. It's a new field.
Yeah.
But she had an art program at Austin Riggs. She wrote a book called Activity, Recovery, and Growth. It's really quite good. But she was afraid, she didn't want to psychologize the art, and neither did Erik. I mean, they had this idea that it had they didn't want art therapists to be junior psychiatrists, which, you know, that was a risk, I suppose.
Yeah.
But the truth was there were kids or adults who couldn't relate to a talk therapist, so they ended up being sent to art therapists, and if you didn't know what you were doing, it was harder.
Yeah. Enter expressive therapies. Okay, well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Do you want to
He was a nice man. What?
Do you want to save those?